Marie DeCosse. How important is travel to you? At a young age, I would go to see my relatives in Italy. I would spend a lot of summers there, and I just gained a different kind of appreciation. Not that they're living better or worse, just different. But I wonder how travel is important to you. Marie spent a lot of her youth, 5 years, in Madagascar and then in Bangladesh. Her mother is from Senegal, and so she spent months there as well in Africa. What do you know about these countries? What do you know about travel? Marie had a great education where she became a CPA, an international tax CPA, and thought she could do more travel, but found out that she couldn't. So she ended up creating this home exchange platform. I was not familiar with this concept until talking to Marie. So we of course we know hotels and public areas like that, and then there's the Airbnbs and some of the others where you can kind of rent people's places. But home exchange is different, where you can actually put your place up and you can live in somebody else's place in an exchange. It's a bit more difficult than that, but it's been around for a long time. They do it in Europe quite often. She has created a platform called Nomad in the United States where that's being done right now. And it's a fascinating concept. It's very, very inexpensive. And we spend almost all the time talking about travel and how we can travel more. She believes it's essential for everyone to do so to increase their perspective and education. Fascinating discussion. I love to travel. I wonder if you do as well. Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word, discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others.
Marie DeCosse, thank you so much for your time. Why is travel such an important education?
Travel really, it bridges cultures, it bridges
Mm.
understanding. When you travel, especially in a home exchange arrangement, you're stepping into somebody else's shoes, seeing their home, seeing their way of
Hmm.
life, their community, their neighborhood. And it forces you to get comfortable being uncomfortable, which makes you into a better person. And I feel
Hmm.
like if we all just took the time to engage in travel more often, we would have more respect and a baseline understanding of each other.
Yeah, just understanding how other people live. Not that it's better, not that it's worse. It's just different.
Exactly. Exactly. And you don't have to, right, conform to
Hmm.
other people's beliefs, but just develop an understanding of why it is that they operate that way, think that way. What is it in their culture, in their upbringing that has shaped them into the person that they are, just like you. Um, I really, having grown up overseas in
Yeah.
a developing country, I got really comfortable being uncomfortable at an early age. And what it really instilled in me is this sense of community, particularly in developing countries, which is
Hmm.
different than, developed countries, which operate by more individualistic ideals. This sense of shared community is so, so important. And I feel like, especially in the States, in the midst of political upheaval,
Hmm.
we tend to lose what community actually means. And and the want to understand each other versus force our beliefs on other people.
Now, Marie, you said you spent time overseas. I mean, Madagascar. I mean, I only know that it's got separate, life, that animal life that's there and nowhere else in the world. There's some archaeological finds there that I read about that are incredible. I mean, can you
Yes.
share what the experience is like there?
It was beautiful. I will preface that I was very young.
Right.
So, my memory comes back in bits and pieces, but it was really beautiful, although we were sheltered to some extent. So my father works in economic development, and because of that, also because of us being fairly young, we went to an American international school.
I
We
see.
were generally around more international folks or expats. But outside of that, right, we had a maid, or we had a housekeeper or a driver that gave us insights into the community,
Mm.
that you just wouldn't get if you were to stay in the US or not have an experience growing up abroad. But I have been asked whether or not I grew up in a cave, if there were talking lemurs, if it was anything like the movie Madagascar, and I can tell you that it was not. It was beautiful, and particularly if you grow up right in the middle class, your way of life is you're very fortunate. And the biggest thing about growing up in developing countries is it helps you see such socioeconomic differences. It's right in your
Mm.
face that you wouldn't see as much if you were living in the US. We were in a fairly nice compound, and just outside the gates, there were a number of beggars. And seeing that as a kid makes you realize and appreciate what you're being given
Mm.
just by way of being born into a family that's able to offer you these things.
Mm. And then Bangladesh after that.
Bangladesh after that. So I was in Bangladesh for 5 years. I returned to the US when I was going into the sixth grade. So I
Wow.
spent the better part of my young life growing up abroad.
Now, Bangladesh, I have a lot of subcontractors that work in Bangladesh. They're wonderful to work with, very
Yes.
giving. They've had some political issues in the last months that I would not have known of if I didn't, because it was barely talked about here in the States. Maybe one night, a little bit, but
Right.
people died, and there's a new leader now there, and but still, the people are just in most countries. The people are wonderful. It's just the government that needs improvement.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. If we just let people run the show, who knows what would happen?
Mm, mm, yeah, beautiful country there as well. And the difference, I'm a foodie kind of. I mean, the food in Bangladesh, primarily, it's a lot of. I imagine like a lot of the neighboring cuisines, a lot of curry, a lot of that kind of influence, and rice. And
Yeah, so it's interesting because, right, the food varies depending on the region that
of
you're in.
course,
So,
of course,
and I think really the baseline is what protein do you have access to? But
uh,
a lot of Bangladeshis are Muslim or Hindu and are vegetarian. So
right.
it flexes. But you see the spice levels changing depending on the region that you're in. The
Hmm.
curry base changes depending on the region that you're in,
Wow.
substituting fish versus substituting goat or lamb. But it's beautiful, and I'm a foodie as well.
Hmm.
Um, Especially having a Senegalese mom, I love,
Ah.
love, love, love to cook. So it was nice to be exposed to varying cultures and their cuisines, and just understanding the mechanics of cooking at a very early age, which has allowed me to flex recipes and bring in different influences just based off of smell or taste, that was instilled
Wow.
at a young age.
Wow. Had you spent time in Senegal?
I have. When we were younger, we would go to Senegal for a month at a time over the
Oh,
summer to reconnect with uh, all of my cousins, my aunts and uncles. I have a ton of cousins, so it's always really, really fun to go back and see them. And what was nice too is, in order to communicate with the Senegalese side of my family, I had to at least understand how to speak French.
ah,
Um, because Senegal, is colonized by the French. So that is a predominant language, but then Wolof is also the predominant language. I didn't have the understanding of Wolof except for the greeting. So I had to learn how to speak French. So it was almost like this intensive study session going back for a month and just having to get thrown into another language and pick it up really quickly.
Hmm. And so English is just not known there at all.
English is known there and they teach
Oh,
it in school.
I see.
But part of my family lives in the city, so it's Dakar.
Ah,
And
ah.
then the other half lives in Tambacounda, which used to be a village and is now developed into more of a well functioning town. But when going out to see the family in the more rural areas, I had to know how to speak French. And even my grandmother, she doesn't speak French and she speaks a little bit of Wolof, but she primarily speaks Jahanke, which is a subdialect. So I couldn't even, we have communicated consistently through the years with nods and hugs and hand motions and the love still comes across,
Of
which is
course.
beautiful.
Yeah, you don't need a language to convey those kind of. And now, of course, with these translators we have, I think Samsung has one that'll actually translate in your ear in real time. I wonder if it understands those dialects. It'd be pretty cool.
Oh, that's a great idea. That would be a great birthday gift for her. She's
Yeah.
over 80 years old, I think, at this point, so I would love to be able to communicate with her fluently.
Mm. Even Google Translate's free, but yeah, you could
Yeah.
speak into it. It'd take a moment to kind of go back and forth, but we're very,
Mhm.
very close to that technology. Had you spent any time in Europe?
We did. It was funny. We would bounce around all the time. So Bangladesh would be our base, and then we would go to Thailand for all of our dental and medical procedures. So we were there.
Really?
Yeah, yes. We were there a few times a year, and then we would go to Europe. I would say semi often because we had a good amount of our family members that were living in France.
Ah.
So we would stop in, visit them on our way back to the US. We would come back to the US for about a month and a half over our summer break while we were in Bangladesh. But it was funny because at the time I was like, the US is great and I can get Disney Channel and I
Mm,
can
mm.
get all these candies that I don't have access to abroad.
But
But I wanted to go back. I
yeah.
had my community in Bangladesh. I wanted to go back. That was the way of life that I was used to at the time.
Yeah, what a fascinating. Let's touch back on so the healthcare in Bangladesh was substandard, so you had to fly somewhere to do it. Is that typical?
I would say that's fairly typical of expats who are in
Uh,
Bangladesh. My dad actually moved back to Bangladesh. He's on another assignment. So he's been there for about 2 years now.
oh,
And he was
uh,
there through the political
yeah.
uprising. They ended up going to Thailand for a little while to wait things out, wait for things to cool down. And while they were there, he got all of his medical procedures done, and so
Wow,
did his wife. Yeah.
wow. And Thailand must be incredible as well. I've never been to Asia or Africa.
Thailand is beautiful. Asia is really it's an area that I recommend people visit more than I would say going to Europe or again a country that you're more comfortable with. I'm
Mm,
constantly pushing people to step out of their comfort zone when it comes to traveling. You have to think about things like right having a translator and really planning out your route so you know where you're going, but you're exposed to cultures that you wouldn't be exposed to
yeah,
in the US, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And Asia is vast. There's so many different cultures and
right,
experiences that are available
right.
to you at a really affordable price.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
highly recommend. And Thailand is pretty easy when it comes to travel for US folks.
The dollar goes a long way, and I hear it's beautiful. Kind of with the food, and so I'll just tell you a quick story, Marie. My father's he's from Italy. He's from the south of Italy, Caserta, which is south of Rome, north of Naples. So I was my mother's from Nova Scotia, by the way. I was spoken French and Italian when I was young, and then they stopped it, and then I forgot everything. But anyway, so 10 years old, first day of summer, my father says to me, gives me a suitcase. He says, "Put your clothes in." suitcase. So I sure, Dad, I put clothes in there. So he proceeds to bring me. So we live outside of New York. He brings me to the bus station, tells the bus driver to drop me off Terminal 1 JFK, gives me a plane ticket and a bus ticket and a picture of my grandmother. Says, you're going to meet your grandmother in Milan. So 10-year-old with a
Oh,
suitcase, get him excited as anything. Of course, now he'd be arrested, right? But so I got there, I asked people, and I flew to Milan. I met my grandmother the first time. So I then spent the whole summer, and I proceeded to spend pretty much every summer after that, all the way through college, in Italy and southern Switzerland with my relatives, with new
wow.
friends that I developed. So you just kind of just develop this other way of, and you just kind of learn to lean back a little bit too with the life that we
Exactly.
have here in the States, and I mean, sure, it takes them years to build a house and get things done, but uh, everybody walks, and it's just a different way. And not that it's right or wrong, but it's just different, and you just look things. Your perspective shifts.
Yes. Yeah. There's more of an appreciation for just life, right? For family, for food, for rest,
Mm,
for all of these things that we take for granted. In the US, there's the mentality of I have to work, work, work in
yeah.
order to get some rest or in order to spend some time with my family. I
Mm,
have
mm.
to achieve this or that in order to get to that point. And then by the time you retire and you have the ability to pour more into the things that you love, oftentimes it's too late. You have fractured relationships. You're older, so you're not as mobile. You're just missing out on all of the beauties of life because we're focusing constantly on work and achieving. So it's nice at an early age to get an understanding of what it means to incorporate beauty into your life in the most simplistic way.
Just the thought of cup holders in a car is so forward. Why are you drinking in your car? And today here in America, we wouldn't they wouldn't never sell us a car without at least two cup. The
Right.
idea of coffee to go, or it's just so different. When I tell my relatives that I work 40 hours a week, and say, they slam that's why you've got gray in your hair. What's the matter with you? Why are you, it's just, uh, but it does get frustrating. uh, Here's something indicative, and I bet you relate to this. So I remember one of the summers that I was there. My two cousins that worked quote unquote for the village, that like swept and did something on the street. I'm not sure. I remember it was a Monday, Marie, and it was raining, and they weren't working. And I said, "Why aren't you working?" And they said, "Well, we can't work when it rains." I said, "Okay." So Tuesday, it was raining again. We can't work when it rains. I said, so Wednesday was a beautiful day. I said, "Why aren't you working today?" And they said, "Never start the week on a Wednesday."
Uh, oh my goodness. I want to move there. Where is that? Because I want to live there.
Southern Italy. I mean, it's just everything is just every day seems to be another holiday.
Oh,
And today's Saint whatever's day. And it's just it is nice, but it gets to a point where I'm applying for dual citizenship now. So that attitude of asking somebody, generally in Europe, asking somebody what they do for a living is kind of an insult, because they don't want to, right? They don't, they only work to just kind of live. They just do it so they can. Is that the same in Asia and in Africa?
I would say so. And it's because, right, these countries operate by communalistic ideals.
Hmm.
It's not about who you are because of, well, in some ways it is. We'll address that later, but
Hmm.
it's not about who you are because of your title
Hmm.
in terms of what you've done in your career. In the US, it's so common. It's for me, especially coming back to the DC area and then having lived there around the East Coast for the majority of my young adult life. The first thing people ask after your name is, "What do you do?"
Right.
Right?
That's what we do
And I
here.
didn't. realize until moving out to Colorado, where things are a little bit slower, it's a
Yeah.
little bit slower paced out on the West Coast, that that was an unusual thing to ask of someone. And then it made me reflect on my time abroad, and it was the same deal when
Fascinating.
you were speaking to people who were Bangladeshi, Thai, right, from that area. But then when you're back into those expat communities and you introduce yourself, it's, oh, what do you do? And then how can I
Wow.
leverage this relationship to get ahead to, do what's going to
Fascinating.
benefit me? So you have a mixed culture depending on
Hmm.
what circle you're around when you're abroad.
And I'm sure that
But
happens here. There's plenty of, non-American communities. I'm here in the west coast of Florida, and there's lots of, Cuban. There's even Italian, and I wonder how it is in those communities. Is it similar? Do they kind of revert to the American way, or do they go back there? I wonder.
I would say it depends again, right? Who's in your circle. And it's funny
Mm,
because my old boss at my previous job, he was a partner in international tax, an Italian guy, super eccentric, just love him. I consider him a mentor. And he was the first partner that I worked with that said, on Fridays, do not put any meetings on my calendar
wow.
unless it is a super important client meeting. I do not want to get on a meeting. And so he had to, right, integrate this balance of what he believed from how he grew up, which is respect for your own time, while also achieving the rigorous schedule that this public accounting firm is putting in front of him. And I'm sure that on Fridays, he dedicates more time to his family and he also utilizes the weekend to do that. So it's about achieving a balance, especially if you're a first generation or, an immigrant trying to navigate life in the US that operates by this more intense structure, almost selfless or selfish structure,
Mm,
while not losing sight of these communalistic values that you were brought up with.
yeah, very, very true. So you were at this firm, and they paid, as I understand, to get your CPA, and you liked doing it, but it just got to a certain point due to all your travel that you needed to continue to do so.
Yeah, so I started my career working for a major public accounting firm as an international tax specialist. And I went into that field because, right, the name is international
International,
tax. I'm assuming I'm going to be able to travel frequently, but quickly realized that I was going to have to grind for about 20 years before
yeah.
I was going to be able to do that. So I ended up actually switching roles after COVID because everybody transitioned to a remote work lifestyle. And the company I was working for at the time wanted people to go back into the office. My saving grace was that, hey, at least with the remote work, I can travel. I can travel. That's
Mm.
the one thing that I wanted to do in my career was to be able to travel while making money. So I switched roles and worked for another public accounting firm. Grinded there for a little bit until I reached the point where I had done my years. I had paid my dues in public accounting and could rotate into an in-house role that would allow me to work on other things, and that's how the business was born.
That's how Nomad started.
That's how Nomad started. Yes, that
Great name.
Thank you. Nomad Travel Groups is my baby, and it's a beautiful blend of of all of the things that sort of make me who I am.
Hmm.
Nomad is a home exchange service that curates home exchange groups that emphasize community, relationship building, and trust. Community is such a big part of who I am, being half Senegalese. And as a remote worker who wanted to travel more frequently, I quickly realized that the cost of accommodation was skyrocketing and it
Mm,
just didn't fit into my budget when I wanted to travel more frequently. I started looking at other home exchange platforms. They're members only, they charge annual membership fees. And it was a very sort of strict process in terms of how to engage in a swap. Your dates had to exactly align, or you had to build credits to engage in a non reciprocal exchange, is what they call it. So it's like there has to be another way to do this where we can foster a sense of relationship building and trust, right? So let's add insurance coverage, let's add background check screenings, and let's curate home exchange groups that give people a shared calendar, group messaging features so they can easily coordinate their travel plans
hmm.
and build relationships with each other. That's what's going to get people to come back to our platform. And then on top of that, we're going to make this cheap for people because at the end of the day, I want people to travel more frequently. And so our stays are very affordable, $250 per week, which is unheard of right now.
Wow. It's a really cool idea because I travel a lot for business now, Marie, and man, the hotels, it's just this. They all the same, and it's just this, and it's just sterile, and it's just like God. You can't ask anybody for a restaurant recommendation because they're all paid to push you places, and
Mhm.
it just gets really really tiring. My daughter's a flight attendant, and same thing there. I mean, she's just seeing them all, and so even
Yeah,
going abroad, like if I didn't have the luxury of being with my family, you can't get any more local than that. So I got such a local viewpoint on what to do when we went into the cities. But they had friends, and you just
right.
always kind of want that hookup, that connection where you go, and this kind of affords that.
Exactly. You want a way to dive into the culture, right? In the most organic way that's not going to shake up what makes it beautiful. And the thing about these hotels and these Airbnbs, what we were seeing in Spain with an increase in
Yeah.
digital nomad tourism, I mean, they're driving up the cost of living and driving out people that make that area so beautiful, so special. But
Mm.
when you engage in a home swap that's at an affordable price, you're not contributing to that disruption. You're
Hmm.
seamlessly integrating yourself into that culture with guidance from the individual that's letting you stay at their home. And they know that area better than anyone. So, who
Hmm.
best to get advice from?
Yeah, what we've seen in Spain recently, where the locals are like squirting water bottles at the tourists, and of course, all the local businesses, the restaurants and the hotels, they love it. Of course, they want more tourists, but like you said, it's just increasing all the prices, and it's driving the locals can't afford it anymore.
Exactly, exactly. It's gentrification, right?
Yes.
In essence, and it's unfortunate. And I understand why locals are frustrated, and they have a right to be
Mm,
frustrated, right? Because
mm.
they were there first.
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing
So
happened in Manhattan. Right? I
yeah,
mean, there's really no local New Yorkers in Manhattan anymore, right? They've all been driven out, and the restaurants I enjoyed as a kid could no longer afford there. And yeah,
yeah.
it's a real terrible thing. So the idea, and I never heard of home exchange before this. I mean, it's a great idea, but so the idea is just you have a place, and you kind of say, okay, people can come here in exchange for me going to their place.
Right. So we take it sort of a step further. So we curate home exchange groups. And here's how it works. So our customers, right, complete their home registration process, and then they have listings to select from on our homepage that are
Ah,
other customers' homes. They select the listings that they prefer, submit that information to us, and then we match them into home exchange groups that meet their listing and location
ah.
preferences. So you have the option of selecting a group of 2 people, 3 people, or 4 people for durations of 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. And as we
Wow.
scale, you'll be able to be in multiple home exchange groups at the same time, which just gives you access to numerous properties.
So the minimum stay is 3 months? I'm
The
sorry.
so it's that's not the stay length, that's
Ah,
just the length that you're in the actual group.
I
Once
see.
you're in the group, you get the shared calendar, and then that's when you can mark when your home is available,
Ah.
communicate with your what we call travel group members. If the dates don't align, okay, let's talk about it. Can I be at your house for this length if I change my availability to these
Wow.
dates? And then request stays at each other's homes.
And it's this is very foreign to me. And so then that would just create a sense of community right there. You're sharing your home with somebody, and so
Exactly.
people they wouldn't really use it for business. It wouldn't be for a couple of days. I mean, they would use it more of a stay, right? Of a more of an event that they would go to.
So I would say our Nomad Light plan, which is what's launched under our existing MVP, that's more for the flexible traveler. So not an individual who's traveling for business. We actually have a separate Nomad business service offering. Um, yeah, it's for the flexible traveler, the remote worker who just wants to be in a different location, wants
Right.
to hop around, right? See things through a different lens
Hmm.
within their home exchange group.
Yeah, I could see how that could be attractive to a digital nomad. I mean, they need good internet, obviously, and be safe, and yeah, and then access to whatever's are so there's two kind of vacationers, right? Beach and mountain, essentially. So are those those? I guess people like to go to cities as well, but are those more popular than others?
So I would say we've seen a range of listings on our platform. We have targeted our marketing efforts to coastal cities, really just cities with a high degree of particularly young professionals.
Hmm.
And we've seen, interestingly, the highest hit from content creators who have a very flexible work
Right.
lifestyle, right? New York, Denver, Texas, and various cities in California have been our highest degree of listing. So we have gotten a few in Canada as well as in Mexico, which is exciting. So for our initial rollout, we're just going to be in the US, Canada, and Mexico. And then as we grow, we'll expand into additional countries. Strategically, it's going to be countries with, again, the highest degree of digital nomad
Hmm.
activity. And we'll also at the time look at regulations surrounding home exchange to make sure that it's the right move for us to expand into that country.
I just thought of something, Marie. You just mentioned Canada, U.S., and Mexico. So in 2026, the World Cup is in all three countries. So
Oh, there you go.
So I would, and it's in 10 stadiums or 10 or 12.
Mhm.
80% of the games will be in the US and then 20 in Canada. And so I would think perhaps those cities would be attractive then. And I would much rather stay in somebody's house, than a hotel.
Yeah.
So this would be this would be very attractive. And how do you, you didn't invent this? I mean, I'd never heard of home exchange before. So I've done Airbnb many times and the others many times for different reasons. I just want something bigger. And but when did this come about?
So, Home Exchange, the earliest company that's still standing, was actually founded in 1992, and
Wow.
it's called Home Exchange. And then the most recent company called Kindred was founded in 2021. Home
Huh.
Exchange has been around for a while. It's just hasn't really, I would say, been a mainstream topic in the United States. So in
Hmm.
Europe, there the mechanism, people are very, very familiar with it. And there
Ah,
have been tons of home exchange companies that have popped up in Europe that
I
were
can see
actually eventually acquired by Home Exchange. It's a huge acquire
that. I see.
in in the space as it grows. But right over time, the mechanism hasn't adapted to changes in consumer behavior, particularly following the pandemic. So, with Home Exchange, the platform, we were seeing a lot more boomers who were just comfortable with the direct swap that they had engaged in with one family on the platform. And so they continuously engaged in a swap with those individuals. The marketing wasn't that great, which means it didn't reach Gen X, Gen Z, or millennials. Kindred, who has recently popped up, has started to do a lot better job educating the public as to what Home Exchange actually is. But the downside of that platform is they're members only. And you have to
Mm.
go through an interview process. They accept on a supply demand basis. You have to have scheduled in home photography. So already that excludes, right, a huge degree of people who are still getting comfortable with what this even is. And now I need to go through this long onboarding process in order to utilize the platform.
Hmm.
So we're making it easier for people to access affordable accommodation via a mechanism that is secure and emphasizes relationship building.
So in order to be on the platform, you can't just take, you got to give too, right? You've got to,
Gotta give.
yeah. So it's both ways. So
Right.
somebody's committed to home exchange, love the idea. How do they select the right partner? What should they be looking for?
How should they select the right property?
Not the right
So,
property, but their platform.
oh, in terms of the various home exchange platforms that are currently
Correct.
out there. So it really just depends, I think, on what exactly you're looking for, right? What locations do you want to go to? And what is your budget in
Mm.
order to engage in a home swap? All of these other platforms, with the exception of Kindred, charge annual membership fees that range from $125 to $300. That's a lot for especially, right, a young professional to add on to their budget on top of the cost of home exchange.
Mm.
Um, so I would go for a platform that is affordable, that allows you to ease into home exchange, participate in the mechanism, recognize whether you love it or you hate it
Mm.
without having to, right, have, a down payment in order to participate in the process. So obviously, I would say our platform speaks to a range of travelers and remote workers, but really just keep in mind what listings the platform offers and the barriers to entry, which is those annual membership fees and the cost that they're asking you to undertake before even engaging in a swap.
Okay, so we've decided on home exchange. We decided on a platform. How do we prepare our home house to be available?
So we actually have guidelines that we set for our travel group members. That's what we call our home exchange groups. It's a travel group. We provide them with a checklist, and it's fairly standard. It's just like if you were to have a friend come over and stay at your house. You want to change out your bedding. You want
Hmm.
to provide right, additional toiletries. You want to make sure that there's basic cleaning supplies. Wash your dishes. Run the dishwasher, vacuum your floors clean,
Huh.
make it
You have to
make
say
it
this?
clean clean your home. That's what
Yes.
we're asking you to do. And right, the nice thing about our home exchange groups is it's not an Airbnb. I could go into an Airbnb and I could wreck the place and they're never going to see me again. And there's not really a way for that host to hold me accountable because I don't care.
Hmm.
You're not staying at my home.
Hmm. Hmm.
But when you're in these groups, there's this Boy Scout mentality of leave the
Hmm.
place better than you found it because you're going to be coming into my home at some point. We're in a group, we're all communicating.
Hmm.
If I do something that I shouldn't have done, everybody's eyes are on me. So it forces you to be a better person and to leave that home clean and to clean the home before your home exchange members come in.
Yeah, because we're holding each other accountable there.
Exactly.
That's very interesting. And often do they have conversations with the homeowner? Actually, conversations like we're having on a call, talking.
Yes, so our MVP currently only allows group messaging, but our dev team is working hard to incorporate group calling functionality. So that will be rolled out in what we call V2 of our product.
MVP, minimal viable product, for those people who don't understand SaaS lingo.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, yeah, very, very interesting and a really cool concept. So, what keeps you up at night? What are the problems that you incur? I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you love travel, you're trying to marry the two, and you're creating this platform. What roadblocks have you come up with?
You know, it's interesting because for a while, what was keeping me up at night was funding. So we're pre seed and we're looking to close our first raise. And I've been pitching constantly to investors for almost 8, 9 months at this point.
Wow.
So it was funding that was keeping me up night after night, despite all the success that we were having with marketing. I'm seeing, our wait list building and our social media following building, and our team is growing. And there's all these positive, beautiful things that are being poured into the company, but I'm still stressing about funding. And then I had I had two wake up calls recently. We were in the final stages of receiving a huge check from a potential investor. We had negotiated terms, we had gone through everything. We just wanted to know what the number was, and we were told it was going to be communicated on X date. I wake up that day so excited, like finally, right? I'm getting past this hurdle, and then we're going to close the door to this raise much faster. I wake up that morning, 7 a.m. I
Oh
get
no.
an email. We apologize, not we apologize, but despite all of your efforts, we have such faith in this company.
But
We're not going to invest at this time. And I felt like I got sucker punched. I was distraught for a solid hour. But what was funny was right after reading that email, the first thing that came to my mind was, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. We're
mm,
going to prove you
mm,
wrong, and you'll
mm.
see. And then 3 days later, I'm on a scooter and I take the worst fall I have ever
Ah,
experienced on a scooter, twisted my ankle, was in a full brace and crutches for a week. And I remember that weekend, I'm sitting there, there's nothing for me to do. I have a swollen ankle. I've gotten sucker punched by the universe twice. I'm thinking, what is it? What am I doing wrong? Am I on the right path? It really forced me to reflect. And what that experience made me realize is we already have all the tools to success. We secured a partnership opportunity to commercialize. We have a team that's building out V2. Our marketing efforts are already doing amazingly well. So why am I spending all this time, right, trying to get funding in the door, trying to convince people that this is the next wave when we've already convinced our consumer and we're already building out the platform to allow more consumers to come onto it and for it to be a success. So, after having gone through that existential crisis, I don't worry about funding anymore because it made me realize that I already have all the tools
hmm.
to success. And the more we continue to make waves, that funding is just going to come in the door naturally.
Good for you. Good for you. I started my business in the 90s, and there was some nights where I didn't think I was going to make payroll, and you know it's tough. It's tough being an entrepreneur. Is there anything in the last month or so, Marie, that you changed your mind on?
So, we secured a partnership opportunity with a community to create an exclusive collaboration under what we call our Nomad Premium channel, which is set to launch in the spring of 2025. And This is where I'm just so amazed and grateful for the team that I have. My head of operations, Mel, she has a background in strategy and management consulting. And as you know, we were excited about this partnership opportunity. We were thinking about the rollout, and then she chimed in and she said, "Hey, so let's make sure we're protecting the Nomad brand, right? Let's be really smart about how we're bringing this opportunity to market so it doesn't confuse our initial customers while
Hmm.
also, right, enhancing the experience for this collaboration opportunity." So she really held my feet to the fire, made me think about the rollout in a much more strategic way. Um, and in a much more sort of calculative way. So I'm grateful for her and her advice, because you need that as a founder when you're constantly saying go 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 go. You need people to check you and to really make you recognize, right, this is all part of the bigger picture.
Hmm.
Let's make sure that these puzzle pieces fit in the right way.
Yeah, you have to listen to those. It's tough as an entrepreneur because sometimes you hear so many things you don't know what to listen to, what not to. You've got to make a decision. But something like that really kind of, bet you kind of set back a little bit and just, wow, this is really something that I haven't thought of, and it's great to have those key people there, Marie.
You have to. Yeah, your core initial team, right, is going to make or break you. You have to have trust in the people that you've brought onto the team and allow their expertise to speak for itself. I try not to micromanage. I like my team to speak up and guide the product or service because their input is critical at this stage.
I work with a lot of tech firms and smaller ones, and yeah, micromanaging and even delegation is some of the hardest things because they have to let go a little bit. And I still know some business owners who still order the pizza. I'm like, look,
Yeah.
you can get somebody to do that. It's very tough to do because it's their baby, and you've got to let go in order to let it grow sometimes. So I started my business, like I said, in the 90s, and I was working way too hard, Marie, and I was putting my own health in the back seat, working late and not paying attention when I was eating. And I'm at the doctor, and she tells me I'm at 340 pounds. And then she says to me, if
Oh,
I don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. My daughter was just born. In
mm.
fact, it's her birthday today. Um,
Oh, wow.
yeah, some 24 years ago. And so it scared me, right? So I'm driving home, punching the steering wheel. This is my pie hole. I did this to myself, and I'm going to take myself out of it. And furious with myself. How can it's not just me anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's this family. So I spent the next 6 7 months, lost 130 pounds, and you can't look at it as a finishing line, right? You have to change your habits completely for your life, not temporarily. And so I tell people the story, and the quick answer, the quick question is, "What's your secret? How'd you do it?" And of course, there's no secret, Marie. Discipline. That's how I lost it. Routine. I was restrictive. I have process, um, and just discipline is how I did it. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Marie DeCosse.
Mm. So discipline is hugely important, and I for me it was a result of playing tennis competitively
Mm,
growing up. I had to balance a intensive workload while also competing at a very high level. And what it taught me was I can handle performing at this level. I can juggle numerous things while remaining calm, while remaining calculative to a certain extent, and while also giving myself a little bit of grace.
mm,
Um, and so I appreciate having been thrown into such a high intensity sport at a young age for giving me that discipline at a young age.
mm.
And as it carries into my adult life, right, the ability to focus for hours on end, knowing that I had to achieve this goal and cross it off the list. That contributed to me earning my CPA at a really young age, to working for a public accounting firm in a difficult role to obtain. And then from there, having this wild idea that I should start a business that combines my passion for travel with my business background, knowing that I can achieve it because all I have to do is just grind, understand the market better than my competitors, build out a team. Discipline makes you have confidence in yourself
Hmm.
because you realize what you can achieve by marking off, right, those small goals initially in order to achieve the big goal. So if I didn't have discipline starting with playing tennis at a young age, I would have never had the confidence in myself to climb the ladder to eventually build a company like
Hmm.
this.
And with the travel, being in these different countries, was discipline ever kind of imposed or suggested or just kind of there? I wonder how it was referenced there in
I would
Madagascar,
s-
Bangladesh.
I would say it depended on your family.
Hmm.
My family is a family of high achievers as well on both sides. Um, my on my dad's side, almost everyone went to an Ivy League, got a master's or a
Wow.
PhD, and it's just extremely, extremely impressive. And then on my mom's side, the sort of patriarch of the family actually ran for president in
Wow.
Senegal a few years ago. Everybody else is a high achiever studying abroad. My cousins are studying abroad in high ranking universities. So
Hmm.
not achieving was sort of out of the question.
Hmm.
We were taught at a young age that you should find what you love and you should chase it. And that doesn't mean that you have to be a doctor or you have to be, what is stereotypically a success career or an impressive career. But if you're going to do something, you better pour yourself into it and you
Hmm.
better do
Hmm.
it well.
Hmm.
And that was just my family's mentality. But I think different families varied.
Hmm. What motivates you, Marie?
What motivates me is really this unwavering belief that I understand this market better than anybody else,
Hmm.
having lived it, right? And
Hmm.
seeing it from both sides
Hmm.
as an American and as an individual who's grown up abroad traveling. The response from our consumers has been so impressive despite our limited marketing budget. So, what motivates me is the reason I started this company in the first place. I want people to travel more often. I want travel to be the norm and not just reserved for the privileged.
Hmm.
So I will continue to do what I can to make this platform what I believe it's going to be in order to shape a world where we're able to bridge understanding with each other
Hmm.
through frequent travel.
Yeah, so often I hear with things going on in other countries, it's like, well, I don't really, I don't know what's going on there. I don't really understand. But if you've actually traveled there or friends that have traveled there, you can just gain a much more deeper appreciation. It sounds like what you just described there, Marie, is kind of a mission statement, just to have travel as an essential need of the population.
I do believe it's an essential need, and this generation is really going to shake things up.
Hmm.
I mean, we're already seeing it right with the rise of more and more entrepreneurs and content creators, and just a different approach to life that emphasizes work life balance. This generation is interestingly combining right the individualistic and communalistic ideals in a beautiful, beautiful way. And it was the pandemic that made us realize
Hmm.
that we could work but also enjoy life at the same time, truly enjoy life. So I think we're hitting the market at exactly the right time. And I'm just excited to see where this company is going to go.
So, given that motivation, Marie, how do you measure success?
I measure success by the feedback that I get from my customers and from my team. If I get one email that says, "Thank you so much, I've been looking
Mm.
for something like this," that's a successful day for me.
Hmm.
If I have a team member that I'm seeing is growing in confidence from being put in a position where they have to juggle numerous things, and it's a beautiful thing to see them really own what it is that they're doing. That is a successful day for me. And then, obviously, I think sucker punching those investors right back who didn't believe
Mm.
in us at our early stage,
Mm.
that'll be the second measure of success, and
Mm.
I'm excited for us to get there.
I applaud what you're doing. I love what you're doing. I love your passion for it. You've got all the right reasons to do it. It's absolutely wonderful. I thank you so much for your time, Marie. So, anybody listening, if they want to get in touch with you, how can they do so?
So please give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok at We Travel Nomad. Go ahead and check out our site at wetravelnomad.com. We're also on LinkedIn at Nomad Travel Groups. And if you just want to say hi, please drop us a message at customer service at wetravelnomad.com, or go ahead and connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to hear from you.
WeTravelNomad.com. We'll make sure to put it in the show notes. Marie, if next time in the greater Colorado area, perhaps we can get a cup of tea. I thank you
I
so
would
much for
love
your
that.
time. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much for having me on.
You be well.
You too.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.